Why are you doing this every time I'm filming? What are you chasing? My cat is slaying imaginary dragons, I have to assume. Is there a fly? Oh no, you're just crazy. Hello fellow readers and readresses. Today is the 11th of May of the year of 2024. My name is Sylvia and I have not yet finished a book this month, which is particularly devastating because I have no less than 11 books on my TBR, which are actually 14. If you're curious to find out how I got myself into this particular nonsense, you can watch this video, but I think we can all agree that given the circumstances, my reading situation is dire. As such, I have decided to fight bad luck with stupidity and pertinaciousness, and I'm not even sure if that's a word, but we're going with it. To be more specific, I will attempt the 24 and 48 reading challenge, whereupon I will try to read for 24 hours in the next 48. I was initially thinking of doing a straight up 24 hours reading challenge, but I mean, I'm 37 years old, people. I'm not staying up intentionally for 24 hours unless I'm being paid, and even then, I'll probably call in sick. So we're doing this instead. Now, can I do it? Well, it is the weekend. I have nowhere to be. I have taken care of everything around the house that needs taking care of. I have slept well. I'm not in the habit of responding to my friends anyway, so I think my chances are pretty good. I will also attempt to document my experience for this video, but I tend to get a little distracted, so we'll see what kind of quality footage I can offer at the end of this hell. Now, to make this a little more interesting for you to watch and for me to do, I am adding an element of randomness to this whole mess. I have put the 14 books I have on my TBR on a spinner wheel, and upon starting, I'm gonna spin it to see what I'm gonna read. Then I'm gonna track my reading precisely, and every 2 hours of reading, I'm gonna do a mood check and see whether I want to continue with the same book or spin the wheel again. At the end of this whole thing, I should be hopefully able to tell you exactly how many hours and minutes I read during the next 48 hours, how many pages I read in total, my average page per hour speed, and which books were the most engaging, as well as any other random observations I might think of. During this period of time, I will try to update you both frequently and briefly, so I won't have to spend a week editing and you won't have to spend an hour watching, but frankly, I don't think I can guarantee either of those, especially since I've been yapping for about a quarter of an eternity already. Now, I don't want you to think that I just woke up with this idea. I have pondered this for a few days and I have even prepared. I have food, I have beverages, I have eye drops and cushions and blankets, and obviously I have all the books on my TBR, some in more than one format. Now, enough foreplay, let's get to spinning the thing. Also, this experiment starts right now. I am quite excited and a little terrified, but let's go into spin number 1. You ready? I'm not. Oh, alright, we're starting strong. Persuasion by Jane Austen is a classic romance and one of the few books written by her that I still haven't yet read. It's on my TBR because I got a prompt card to read a book that features romance, so I decided to pick this one up. First of all, because I love the author's writing, and second of all, because I needed a book that was slightly shorter than the rest of the ones that I got. This one is less than 300 pages, so I have a very good feeling about hopefully being able to finish it during this weekend, but we'll see. I'm gonna go into reading it right now, and I'm gonna update you in about 2 hours. We are done with the first 2 hours of this reading experiment, out of which I read for about an hour and a half, and I am currently at page 76 of Persuasion by Jane Austen, and I have to tell you that so far I am enjoying this book so very much. I have absolutely no intention of stopping to read it right now. It follows kind of a theme in most of Jane Austen's stories, where she follows a family that's not very rich, kind of on the brink of going under financially, and their few daughters. In this case, we're following the youngest of the three, which isn't very young in the standards of, back in the day. The heroine is 27 years old, which is a refreshing thing, especially again when you take into consideration the times when these books were written, where the heroine is usually in her mid to late teens. So this was a nice thing. This is kind of like a second chance romance from what I can understand, because the main characters, the ones whose love story we're actually following, used to know each other and were even engaged, which was 8 years ago, but then they separated because of the persuasion of particular people. We have the very typical for the author, interesting, colorful characters, ridiculous, sometimes absurd situations, and very interesting takes on society and humanity in general. I'm having the best time. Mood 10 out of 10 so far. So I'm going to continue reading this and I'm going to update you in 2 more hours. Okay, so it is now 4:30 in the afternoon, which means that it's been 4.5 hours since the last time I updated you, and I didn't update you anymore because I decided to just read until I finished Persuasion, and I finally did, and I am so happy I read this book. This is such a lovely book. I have a general issue with reading romance, mostly because it usually makes me feel uncomfortable, but this one was so wholesome, filled with such gentle affection, and focusing more on the philosophical aspect of relationships rather than the strictly physical. Matter of fact, there's pretty much no physical expression of romance in these books, which is why I think I'm enjoying them so much, and it's additionally helped by the amazing writing style of the author. I had such a good time. I'm giving the book 5 stars, and while Pride and Prejudice will forever probably remain my favorite Jane Austen book, this one is definitely taking the second spot as of right now. Highly recommend. So now we are 6.5 hours into this experiment, and I've already finished the book, which is very satisfying to me, not only because I have a gigantic TBR, but also because I genuinely am enjoying myself. And now I think it is time for us to do spin number 2 and hope that I'm gonna continue enjoying this experiment further on. So without further ado, let's do spin number 2. Hey, that rhymed a little bit. Alright, we got Fables Volume 1. This is a graphic novel that I decided to put on my TBR after I landed on the graphic novel tile of my TBR game, and after it being recommended by one of my subscribers, Ash. According to the description, this is an urban fantasy fairy tale retelling, and that's pretty much all I know about it, so I'm gonna go and read it online since I don't have it as a physical copy. I'm quite excited about this. I do like fairy tale retellings, especially if they're a little bit darker, and also I'm happy that I'm getting a graphic novel as the second book for this experiment because I already had a somewhat strong start and I wouldn't mind gaining some more momentum in the first day. So let's go do that. It is about 5:30 now, and I am feeling a little sleepy, so I think I'm gonna go take a nap. But I read the first issue from the first volume, obviously, and am in the middle of the second issue, and I'm enjoying it quite a lot so far. Very interesting interpretation of the characters. I'm gonna speak more about it later. Nap time. It is now 8 p.m. and I'm having my second cup of coffee for the day. I slept for 2 hours, I think. And this is particularly ironic because I don't remember the last time I took a nap. It just doesn't happen to me. I sleep during the night and I'm awake during the day usually. But today, for some reason, I felt relaxed enough to take a nap. Still, nothing is lost. We have plenty of time, so I'm planning on drinking this coffee and continuing reading Fables Volume 1. I think I'm gonna try to finish this one before I pick another book, particularly because this is not a very long read, and if I can focus on that, I can make more progress. Context switching usually is not very conducive to productivity. And then I'll try to update you as soon as I'm done with the thing. Just to give you a little bit of a summary of what this is about. Basically, we have all of these fairy tale characters that live live in New York City, as far as I understand. They have been banished from the fairy tale land by an entity called the Adversary. We don't know much about them yet. And so far, I have seen a handful of them. We have Snow White, who's the deputy mayor of this secret government that they have for their own, because it's kind of like an underground thing. The mundanes don't know about the existence of the fables. And her sheriff is the big bad wolf, and they are investigating the disappearance of Snow White's sister. And there's other specificities, but I'm not gonna go into them. So far, it's pretty interesting. I like the art style, I like the story. I'm gonna continue reading it and update you, as I said, a little bit later. It is now almost 10 p.m. and I am done with the first volume of Fables, Legends in Exile, and I think I'm gonna give it 5 stars because this was so much fun. I absolutely loved it. I loved the art style, as I already mentioned. I loved the story. I love how it was broken down. It was kind of like a murder mystery. Actually, it was a murder mystery, but in this very interesting environment, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing with this series. Thank you, Ash, for this lovely recommendation. I'm very grateful for that. It's always nice to find a new series that you want to continue with, and this one is definitely one of those. So far, we are still in the first day of this experiment, and I've already finished 2 of the books on my TBR, even though they weren't very long, and it took me way longer to finish them than I initially anticipated. Still, I am very happy with this development, and I am very much looking forward to spin number 3, which we will do right now. All right, so it's time to do it. Oh. Okay, we have Map of Bones by James Rollins. Give me 1 second to get the book. Map of Bones by James Rollins is an action-adventure thriller and the second book in the Sigma Force series. This is the Bulgarian edition. I will overlay the English version over here. So, I started reading this one last month because it was part of my April TBR, actually, and I am almost done with it. As you can see, I'm very close to the end. It is very interesting, but very dense and packed with things happening and with history and with theories and conspiracies and all of that. So it's a lot of fun, but it also is a lot in general. So I am happy that I got this one because I think I can finish this within the next hour if I focus. And I'm going to try to do that. What a great turn of events. Hey, it's 25 past 11 and I am done with Map of Bones by James Rollins, and I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars, even though technically I think this book could deserve more, but I just didn't enjoy it as much. There was a little too much in it. Kudos to the author, by the way, for the research that he has done. There's a lot of historical information involved here, a lot of general knowledge, not just about history. There's geography, there's physics here, there's mathematics, quite a few things. I like it when authors are well informed, and this one in particular seems to be very, very well informed. He sparked a lot of curiosity in me about a lot of the subjects that he discussed here, and I googled some stuff, and I have a list of things that I would like to Google later on again. So generally speaking, I do recommend this book. I do recommend this series, especially if you're a fan of Indiana Jones type of books and also Dan Brown's writing. This one in particular seems way closer to Dan Brown's writing because it has a religious undertone here. Actually, it's not an undertone, is one of the main themes of the book, and I found it a very nice touch. So I do recommend it. There's a lot of adventure, there's a lot of action, a lot of knowledge, which I think I already mentioned, so I'm gonna stop talking. Either way, a great read. I'm really happy. We are, 13 and a half hours into this experiment, and I've already finished 3 books, and frankly, I haven't read the full 13 and a half hours. Obviously, I took a nap and everything, so we're doing pretty well. So I'm gonna do spin number 4, and we're gonna see what I'm gonna read next. And yes, my cats are playing in the background with something that's definitely not a cat toy. All right, this is exciting. All right, right, so we got The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I just realized that I didn't remove Map of Bones from the list, but it doesn't really matter. So this is an adult fantasy mystery that I started reading 2 days ago, was it? And I am enjoying immensely. The setting is so original. The main characters are very interesting. The whole thing is very creepy, kind of body horror-y at times, and everything is so moody and mysterious. And I don't want to tell you anything about the particular setting because I think going into it blind will be the best thing. But believe me, so far, I am 35-40% into it, and I'm having such a great time reading this thing. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing to do so. It is currently 11:30, so I don't know how much longer I can continue, but given that I took a nap this afternoon, I think I should be good to go. I will update you in 2 hours probably. It is a little bit later in the evening, and by a little bit, I mean almost 2 a.m. I read some more and I reached almost 50% of the book, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit, so I think I'm going to continue reading it until I finish it. We'll see how I feel tomorrow morning, but I think I'm going to go to bed now because I am quite tired, and why keep myself awake when there's all day tomorrow to read? So I'm going to update you in the morning. Good night. Good morning. It is Sunday and it's about 20 past 10 and I still haven't started reading for the day, although I was supposed to start at least 20 minutes ago. Still, I had a good night's sleep and that's a good thing. Last night I left off with The Tainted Cup at about 50%, and this morning I think I'm going to start reading right now until about 12, and then I'm going to decide whether I'm going to continue with this one or do another spin. Either way, I'm going to update you. And that's pretty much it. I'm in a good mood today. I have energy. I'm going to have to read more than I did yesterday in order to achieve my goal, but I think it can be done. I have my coffee here. I have my book here. Let's get into it. Okay, so it's a little past 12 and I'm still reading The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I think I'm going to continue reading it until I read it entirely. I'm past 60% right now and I'm enjoying myself immensely. The story is starting to get really tense and some reveals are happening and some mysteries are deepening. This is such an engaging read. It's so interesting. It's so original. It's so atmospheric. Honestly, so far, I couldn't recommend it more. I hope I'm not jumping the gun because maybe it's not going to end well, but so far I have no indication that this book is not going to be one of my new favorites. Anyway, I'm going to continue reading it and I'm going to update you once I hopefully finish it, unless something else happens. Talk later. It's 2:45 right now. I am at 70-something% in the book. I'm not reading very fast because I stop often to consider what I just read and theorize on things. It's very complicated, it's very complex, but I think I managed to make some pretty good guesses as to what might be going on with some certain things. I'm really excited to get to the end of this and see if I was right. I'm gonna stop for a little bit to grab some food and then I'll go back to reading and update you afterwards. It is now 20-7 and I am finally done with The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I think I'm going to give the book 4.5 stars because, first of all, it was such a great read, such a roller coaster. We discovered quite a lot at the end, but I felt like the ending was slightly anticlimactic. Even though the reveals were quite a lot and quite interesting, I felt as though some of them were slightly too obvious, at least to me, maybe because I've read so many murder mysteries that now it is a little bit easier to figure out the train of thought of the author. Either way, it was still a very good read, and I really liked the overall bigger world building implications of what we saw in regards to these leviathans. And I'm not going to say more because I don't want to spoil anything, but it gave me a lot to think about and I'm super excited about how the story is going to continue. So I'm definitely calling this a win. I recommend it if you're into murder mysteries, if you're into actually fantasy mysteries in general. If you're into fantasy in general, I think this is a very, very interesting world and a very interesting dynamic story that deserves your attention. Now, that took way longer than I was hoping, but when you're trying to read a book that is longer than the ones that I was previously reading, it takes some time. You need some rest. As I mentioned earlier, I was taking some time to think about what I read, analyze my thoughts. Either way, we have 4 books finished already, whilst yesterday when I started this experiment, I had 0 for the month. So I call that a success. And we're now going to do spin number 5 and see what's going to be the next read. We still have quite some time until the end of this experiment, which is going to be 10 a.m. tomorrow. Let's go ahead and do this spin number 5. All right, we have Poirot Investigates. So this is book number 3 from the Hercule Poirot series, and I don't know anything about the plot of it because those are usually very short and I try to go into all of them blind. Those are always very easy to read, at least usually, and very, very enjoyable. And I find it a little funny that I'm gonna read yet another murder mystery after the previous book, but I think it's a good thing because I'm kind of in the mood for it. So I'm gonna grab some tea, which is an appropriate beverage for this kind of book, and I'm gonna get into reading it. All right, it is half an hour later, and as it turns out, this book is actually a collection of short stories, which was a little unexpected for me. I thought it was a full-length novel, but nevertheless, I started reading it. I already finished the first story, The Adventure of the Western Star, and I kind of guessed the twist pretty much right away. It's a short story, all right? There's not much to it, but it was fun. It was fun to read, and I'm going to continue reading it. I think I have the chance of finishing this book rather quickly, maybe in a few hours. I'm gonna give it a try though. To be honest with you, I'm a little exhausted. My eyes are hurting a little bit, so I'm gonna take like 15 minutes rest. Also, I am starting to get a little, book hangover. It's a lot to read so many books in such a short time. It is kind of difficult to enjoy them fully when you don't take breaks between them to really think about what you just read. That is something that, it's not that I didn't know, but I kind of forget sometimes. So this sort of experiments I wouldn't advise to do very often or to do for too long. And it's worse because I haven't really been out since yesterday morning. I just realized that, and that is not something that I would advise to do as well. So maybe next time I do something like that, if I do something like that again, I will incorporate some gym time or some walking in the park, some physical activity to get me out of the house. So that's it for now. I'm gonna take a short break, and after that I'm gonna go back to reading and hopefully maybe be able to finish one more book before the end of this reading experiment. So it is about 10:15 and I have already read for about 11 hours today, and to be honest with you, my head is a total mess. I'm absolutely incapable of processing a coherent thought anymore, I don't think. So I'm gonna try to take like an hour break now and see if I can clear my head. Oh, by the way, I just finished Poirot Investigates, and I think I'm gonna give the book 3 stars because while the stories are nice, they're very short. There's not much to them. There's not much to sink your teeth into. And therefore, I'm not that interested in the twists and revelations and all of that. I find myself, I can't even find the words. I'm just not that intrigued by short stories that are supposed to be mysterious in nature, I will say. I would rather read short stories that are more introspective of the feelings of a person. I think this is the kind of short story that could actually grab my attention, especially right now, because really it's just been so much reading, and it's not that I'm reading one particular book where I can just sink my teeth into it, even though that also isn't a great thing because then I dream about those when I read for so long the same book, but because I'm switching context between different reads, this is the 5th book I'm finishing for 2 days. This is a lot of information to process, so I don't even know where I was going with this. Either way, I'm giving the book 3 stars. And I'm going to take a break, and after the break I will come back and do spin number 6, and we're going to see what I'm going to read next. Okay, so a break has been taken, and it's now time to do the last, probably for this reading experiment, spin, which is going to be spin number 6. All right, let's do it. And we got The Poison Belt. What's the matter? Why are you so upset? Or are you just bored? You're bored, aren't you? The Poison Belt by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is a historical fiction or science fiction. I'm not entirely sure. It's a continuation of The Lost World, and it's a novella. I got it from the library because it was very short, and I had a task to pick a book from the library. I'm going to overlay the English cover over here. I know that it contains the majority of the same character that were in The Lost World, and I love that book. It's one of the first books I remember really loving, and I am looking forward to reading this thing. It's supposed to put the characters in a situation where there's possible global catastrophe, and that is all I managed to get from the synopsis. So I'm gonna get into reading this thing, and I might even finish it tonight. Who knows? Okay, I am halfway through the book. I am at page 72, which is chapter 4, Diary of the Dying. And so far, this has been a rather interesting reading experience because the story is actually surprisingly bleak. When I said global destruction, potentially global destruction, in the beginning, I didn't know that this was actually what the whole thing meant. And frankly, I'm not sure how the author is gonna end this book in order for it to be not too devastating. It's really, really dark so far. But it's interesting because there's a lot of philosophical discussion between the people in the book on the meaning of life, on the meaning of fighting till the end, even when the battle can't possibly be won. So I'm having a relatively good time with this book. There's a lot of merit to it, even though I'm not necessarily enjoying it fully. However, I think the bigger problem right now is that I really have read for way too long, and my brain is a complete mush, and I'm just not enjoying reading right now. Maybe I'm just gonna go to bed, give myself a little break, and then try to wake up early tomorrow and finish this book then and end this whole thing. We shall see. So it is Monday, about 8:30 in the morning, and I just finished The Poison Belt by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and I think I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars because this was not a ghost, it was my insane cats. As I was saying, I think I'm gonna give the book 3.5 stars because while I enjoyed the philosophical musings of it and the general plot of it, I think it all rested on a very shaky premise, and it being essentially a classic science fiction, it couldn't possibly not affect my judgment. Overall, I'm happy I read it, and I'm also happy that I stopped last night when I did, because had I continued reading, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did, and I would have probably given it a lower rating, not only because I wasn't enjoying myself anymore because I was so exhausted, but also because I wasn't in the mental state to comprehend everything I was reading. So here's an advice for you. If you feel like you're not enjoying a book as much as you think you should be, leave it for a little bit, maybe even for the day, and then come back the next day. If you still feel this way, then let it go, but chances are your feelings might just be caused by fatigue. Anyway, we're done with this one. I have about an hour and a half left from the 48-hour period that I gave for myself, and I think I'm gonna do one more spin and read because as of right now, I have read for a little over 23 hours, meaning if I read for an hour more, I'm going to actually achieve the goal that I set for myself. How cool is that? So let's do spin number 7, I think. Wow. All right, let's go. Okay, and we got The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. The Great Hunt is an adult epic fantasy and the second book in the Wheel of Time series, and this is gonna be a reread for me because I read it for the first time back in 2021 or 2022, I'm not 100% sure, and I quite enjoyed it back then. I think this so far has been my favorite one of the 3 that I've read so far in the series. Did this sentence make sense? Doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna open this, read for an hour more, and then bask in the glory of all of my success. Let's do it. It is done. I made it. it. Believe it or not, I was actually able to achieve the goal that I set for myself for the past 48 hours, and as a result of that, I'm completely and utterly exhausted. So there's a high likelihood you'll be seeing this video only later on this week. But let's talk stats. Out of the past 48 hours, I have read for exactly 24 hours and 17 minutes. During that period of time, I finished 6 books and started one, which equated to 1,047 pages. Out of the 7 books that I read during this period of time, I would say that the most engaging was Persuasion by Jane Austen, followed closely by Fables Volume 1, Legends in Exile, and on the third position, again following very closely, was The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. And on the other end of the spectrum, the books that held my attention the least and that I enjoyed the least were The Poisoned Belt by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Poirot Investigates by Agatha Christie, though I think that was for the most part caused by the fact that I was completely exhausted by the time I got to them. Overall, I think this entire experiment was a great success, but would I recommend it? Nah. I wouldn't. I think it could work better if you do it for a shorter period of time, or if you set a smaller goal, like try to read for 16 hours in 48. Another thing I will highly recommend if you try to do this is to definitely incorporate some going out time, some going to the gym time, some going for a walk time, because as much as we enjoy staying home and reading, when you're cooped up for such a long period of time staring at pages and basically competitively reading, this is very detrimental to your levels of energy and enjoyment. So definitely take that into consideration if you try to do this. Overall, I am satisfied with the results because I really have a very heavy TBR for this month, but honestly, I think this was a little too much. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and please let me know whether you've read any of the books that I mentioned here, whether you're planning on reading them. Have you tried this reading challenge? Are you gonna try it? I'm very curious to know. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you'd like to see some of the other weird reading experiments that I've done, check out this playlist. Bye.